Hello everybody!
Hi.
And welcome to the latest Dev2Dev by Flexo. Today we'll be talking about accelerating development with Joule and SAP Build Code. Let me start off by introducing myself. I'm Dev2Dev. I'm a full-stack developer and technical consultant at Flexo. And the reason I'm really interested in the whole accelerated development way of working is because it helps me deliver value to my customers at a way increased time.
Hi, and I'm Bert. I'm a strategic consultant doing strategic innovation workshops to create automation roadmaps and design workshops to create the next great solution.
All right, so let's first go over some ground rules together. Everybody is muted, but you can chat with us in the chat. The moderator will handle your questions. This session will be recorded, and questions are, of course, very welcome. We will answer them at the end of the session. Both the presentation, the slides, and the questions will all be in English. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. First, we'll be talking about SAP's AI vision and Joule's position therein. Then we'll be taking a look at one of the many ways we can use Joule in SAP Build Code. And finally, we will be talking about ABAP, which is, of course, something everybody's curious about. So let's get started.
Yeah, everyone knows about the great potential of AI. Think of GTP beating 90% of the lawyers trying to pass the bar, etc. But on the other hand, when it works perfectly, it looks almost like magic. But when it fails spectacularly, and we get into the cringe comedy of errors. Think of those same lawyers trying to use ChatGPT to get similar cases to use in their defense, for example, or in their case, and getting fined because the cases that ChatGPT came up with were basically hallucinated, were made out of thin cloth. Very embarrassing. You don't want that for your own AI solution, and that's why.
Bert, if I can interrupt you for a moment.
Yes.
I'm very happy that you mentioned hallucinations.
Okay.
Because as a developer, it's also something that we come into contact with.
How so?
When using large language models to generate code.
Okay.
Because for the more commonly known programming languages, there is, of course, a lot of open source data. Mm-hmm. However, for the newer innovations and perhaps the more closed source systems, which I'm, of course, talking about ABAP, then those large language models do have a tendency to hallucinate. Suddenly, they will start inventing classes or methods that are close enough, but when you try to execute them, they don't work because they just don't exist.
Yeah.
Likewise, you also sometimes run into the risk that it makes suggestions, but those suggestions are actually outdated because it just doesn't know enough about that specific programming language or that specific use case to really deliver business value.
Yeah, indeed.
So let's talk about how SAP sees all of those things.
Yeah, indeed. So the AI solutions SAP delivers is basically on these three principles. It should be relevant, it should provide business value, and it should be reliable. So no hallucinations. And SAP is capable of doing that by basically it's using your data, or it can make use of your data, real data, and it has a large library of code for its learning. And thirdly, it should be responsible as well. So SAP ensures that all data is according to privacy legislation, and you can mask data, etc., so that it doesn't get out of your ecosystem, basically. So how does the SAP Business AI platform, so SAP solution relate to SAP? So AI is in all lines of business, embedded basically already, and can be turned on with a switch of a button, basically, by a matter of speech, of course. So, for example, in HR, it can generate job profiles, or in sales, it can automatically create sales orders. And all these embedded AI functionalities make use of basically underlying AI functionalities in the AI foundation. And those you can use as well in your customized, in your own custom solutions that you're building as a developer. So very interesting to know as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something that interests me.
Yeah. So And on top of that, sorry, going back here, you have Joule basically that making it all available through chat, through a chatbot, basically you could say. So for all those lines of business, you can ask questions, and what can it do? Basically, you can ask to create data, delete data, update data. You can ask it to take you to the right screen to do what you want to do. It allows, it can analyze data as well and give reports. And yeah, you can ask questions, so it's as well. And on top of that, all these offered embedded functionalities, you as a programmer, you can create your own Joule skills that can be triggered by asking Joule about it in SAP Build. I mean, you can develop it in SAP Build and ask Joule about it. So, and again, also you have document grounding. What does that mean? That you basically can ground your documents, embed information from your system so that when a question is asked to Joule, it makes use of real relevant data in those documents or in your systems to provide answers. So over to you.
You're scrolling in the wrong...
Yeah, I'm stuck. Sorry. Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, there has been a lot of excitement about all of those AI services. For example, you've got your document extraction service, which is, well, simply a lovely way for the AI to quickly scan some sales orders, for example, and really get the relevant parts out of it and immediately trigger a flow, immediately deliver value.
Yeah, it's a OCR on steroids, basically.
OCR on steroids.
You as a user, you can, or as a developer, you can define what should be extracted by the AI, and then when you send documents to it, it extracts it. It works very well. Yeah.
So for those of you who are familiar with the Business Application Studio, or BAS, which is the BTP-based and web browser-based IDE, developer environment of SAP, which is something that SAP recommends to use when working with Freestyle UI5 applications, we're working with CAP applications, we're working with Fiori elements, mobile, a lot of developments. I think that's what I'm getting to. So we've already got that BAS, and now we've got Build Code, which really is BAS on steroids. So why is it BAS on steroids? Well, of course, it's got all of the core BAS features that we know and love. It's got all of the intuitive layout functionalities, all of the built-in wizards. But it's got so much more. And of course, the flagship of all of those extra features is Joule as a generative AI assistant that will help you really speed up your development process. We've also got those previously mentioned wizards, tools, and the like. And those two have some very close integration with Set AI.
Okay.
So it will really help us speed up a lot of progress. And finally, it's all supported for Freestyle UI5, Fiori elements, CAP applications, which is not mentioned here explicitly, but it goes, since it's a BTP service, it starts from a very CAP-focused approach. And finally, SAP Mobile Services, which is something they've really been developing a lot about in the last few months.
Sounds promising.
Yeah, it is. So let's quickly compare a specific use case, and let's start talking about app generation. So when you start building an app, then you usually start with some kind of generator, just so we can get the skeleton generated, just so we can get some boilerplate classes out of the way. Well, both the classic way of working, as Build Code, has that, of course, but Build Code has so much more. It's got a way to generate your data model and the services, so the way that the data gets exposed to the outside world. It can generate business-relevant test data.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah, because let's be honest, when you're a developer...
Nobody likes doing that.
No, nobody likes that. And especially when you've got a more complex data model, then you run into the risk of who it's not matching. You have to cross-check entities. It's cumbersome. Well, we can solve that. It's possible to generate extra logic out of the box, as well as just add a front end to your service that you've just generated. And it's also possible to extend all of this. That sounds exciting, right?
Right, yeah.
So with that in mind, is there an app that you might want to have built?
Yeah, I would like to see an app to keep track of all the skills of our consultants,
Oh.
and that's in line with the Fiori design principle to keep the experience consistent for all apps. Basically, I would like to see that.
So when I hear these requirements, of course, I'm thinking about Fiori elements, since we really want it very close to the guidelines. It should also all be possible within the guidelines if I hear about the app description. And then I'm thinking about a CAP middleware to really keep track of all of those skills of all of those employees. For those of you who have not heard of CAP, I apologize because I have been saying it a few times. But CAP is basically the BTP middleware language of SAP, which allows, it's domain-driven. What does that mean? It allows you to define your database and the services, so the ways that you expose the data in that database, and put a front end on top, making use of Fiori elements, as well as a lot of logic to set database. And a nifty part, of course, is that you're writing both your application layer as your database layer in one go. So let's get started. You would like an application to manage Flexo's employees and their skill proficiencies. It should follow the guidelines, and of course the data should make sense.
Of course.
All right. With that said, let me switch to Build Code. That's the wrong tab. This is the correct tab. Let me just briefly find my cursor. There it is. And let's get started by creating a project. Let's just go for a full stack application.
Okay.
And let's call it Dev2Dev demo. Let's not make it too complex. Of course, for those who are familiar with build apps with BAS, you will see that it's of course the same layout. Even the tab itself looks the same. So let's enter it. And now the project is being generated. No worries, no AI is involved at this point. It's just getting everything ready to start developing. So now the project is being opened. And one thing that we're immediately presented by is the storyboard. And the storyboard is a logical way to split your application into several parts. In my opinion, it really shines when you're working with CAP applications because, you can do just everything coming from this point of view, but it's not exclusive to CAP. As you can see, it's possible to plug external services into it. And of course, when you're working with a freestyle UI5 application, you can also use a storyboard way of working. So that's one of the exciting things. It's also not Build Code exclusive. It also is available for the normal Business Application Studio, but it's definitely something that really shines when using it in the Build Code. So on the left side, we've got our Joule, which is of course Joule. And let's start by clicking it open. We're greeted by our digital assistant, our special guest for today. And immediately I want to highlight one design principle of SAP when it comes to AI, and that is that they want you to always be aware when you're using AI. So there shouldn't be things happening that are actually AI driven when you don't know about it. Makes sense, right? So let's get started. And of course, since we don't just want to watch me type, I've got some prompts selected in advance, but I can assure you it's there's nothing. No, that's not what I wanted to do. It's actually. Oh, yeah. Sorry, technical delay. So let's start by, telling Joule to generate us a project. So what I've said here, it's a little bit technical, but it's definitely something that's very readable. You don't have to be an expert in CAP to understand what's happening here. we want we want some entities. These entities should look like that. And let's go straight ahead. And now Joule is thinking about the most optimal solution to the prompt that we just gave it. While we're waiting, how long do you think it will take to get a working app?
Well, I'm very curious, actually. Well, there is some code already. Is it any good?
Well, let's take a look, because that is also one of the design principles of Joule and AI for SAP, is that there should always be a human in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
So whether it comes to accepting the generated code, or whether it comes to making use of the AI services, it should always be a human that makes the final decision.
Yeah.
Because especially when it comes to things like sales orders or maybe even recruitment, then there might be some ethical concerns to take note of. Well, this looks good to me, so I will choose to accept this. So now we see that our data model gets immediately populated. And there's also something else that I've noticed. For our employees, we've got a name, we've got an email, we've got a hire date, but we don't know what their job title is.
Yeah,
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, now those who are familiar with older generators might think, well, it's generated code, you probably shouldn't touch it. But that's not true at all. You can just ask Joule to make changes to it. Just as well, you can just write some code yourself as a developer. So let me just tell it, add a job title property to our employees entity. Makes sense, right? And then now it has added a job title, as we can see, while keeping all the rest of the data. So once again, we choose to accept it. The storyboard gets updated. And well, now we've already got a solid application, but we won't be able to see we won't be able to see anything.
No UI yet.
And also no data. So let's also change that. So let's say that we say generate some test data, and of course, because we want to use it as an internal tool, it should make sense that their email addresses end in Flexo. And since we're an SAP company, it should also make sense that their skills that they've got are related to SAP. Because nothing is weirder in a demo than suddenly seeing that your project manager is skilled in gardening.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that might still be cool. But so let's also ask this of Joule. Once again, it's thinking. And you can see that it also generated some test files. We could take a quick look here, but those are a lot of IDs. That makes sense because I picked the mapping table. Probably should have picked this one. And here we see SAP Fiori, SAP HANA, SAP ABAP. No. It's probably correct, right? And also, also the fact that it uses ID is also very much best practice. So we've got all of this, but now, well,
the UI.
Yeah, that's the one we're interested in. And that's not, we don't even have to use Joule for that. That's just one of those wizards that come natively with the Business Application Studio. So let's call it Employee Skill Manager. For the description, let's go with Manage Employee Skills. Yeah, here we get the choice between either a web app or a mobile app. Web app is perfectly fine. And yeah, once again, we're greeted by some best practices as far as Fiori Elements goes. Yeah. We, of course, go for a list report. And finally, we get the question, what's your main entity? Well, we start from an employee point of view. And of course, we want to see the employee skills. And finally, we press on Finish. Storyboard is refreshing. So as we can see, we've got our 3 components. Let's boot it up. So it's installing some dependencies. On the right side, we've got a page map, in case we want to do more advanced stuff. So here we are greeted by a mock launchpad. and let's take a look at what has been built for us. So we're presented by an app. Let's actually get some data. And over here we see some employees, we see their hiring dates, and of course we see their job titles. Yeah. Those columns have all been natively picked, automatically picked, I mean. Same with the filters. Let's take a look at our project manager. And we see that unfortunately it does not appear she has any skill mappings.
Oh.
Well, let's add some then. So you can just immediately create it. That's also a functionality that's supported. So let's click on create. Let's select a skill from here. Let's say they know a lot about success factors. Let's go with expert in success factors. Let's apply it and let's save it. And now our project manager is an expert in success factors.
Okay.
Looks pretty neat, right?
Yeah.
You immediately got a nifty tool to manage your employees. So that makes me wonder, is there anything else you might desire?
Yeah, I would like to be able, for example, when we create a new employee, that it checks whether the email is correct, for example, and I would also like some filtering as well.
Yeah.
So.
Let's say some ways to filter them by their skills and their proficiencies.
Oh.
Well, that's also something that natively happens in BAS. So you're quite in luck. So let me just quickly close this. From experience, I found that it's always better to just close the preview unless you're really making very small changes. But sometimes when you're using the wizard for some of the tools, yeah, it might behave not weirdly, but it just goes less than smooth. So we want to have some extra filters. Well, that's why we've got that page map, which allows us to really customize our front-end application. So let's click on this, configure page, and let's go to our filter fields, and then click on this button, which is of course adding some standard filters. And let's go for proficiency level and our skill ID. Let's add it. So we've got our two proficiencies now. That's also been natively added. And now we can close this. And then you mentioned that it would be nice to allow only flexo.com email addresses.
Yes.
Well, that's where something that Joule can help us with. So once again, we go to our services. And since it's of course an enhancement on the way that we expose and receive employee data, we right-click on employees, decide to add some logic to it. We're greeted by, once again, a generator, which is also something that's standardly built in. We can add this. We can say that it should be relevant when you're creating and updating an employee. And now you can just say, hey, let's start writing some AI-enabled application logic. So once again, it creates the files for you. That's also something that I should probably point out. Just because I'm working with the storyboard does not mean that the files don't exist. I'll show it by the end of the project, but you really follow the whole file structure and the full repository best practices very closely. So we already got a prompt that asks us what kind of application logic it should generate. So let me just copy paste it down here. And say it should only be possible to have an email address that ends in @flexo.com. So now it's generating, it starts looking at several files, and it generates some simple validation check. Let's accept it. It gets updated over here, and let's launch it once more. How many minutes did you say it would take?
Well,
I think it's 5. So we're greeted by our mock launchpad. We can see that our new filters have been added. So we can immediately, let's see what our developer is proficient in. SAP ABAP. Yeah, that also makes sense.
Yeah.
So we can also see that when you start filtering on SAP ABAP, that the correct person is shown. And let's now create somebody new.
Okay.
Let's go for myself.
Yeah, with the Gmail domain email. For
No,
example.
let's just go with my Kronos.
All right.
Let's go with full stack developer. However, I do see that there is something that should be added. Do you see it as well? I can put in my name.
Yeah, but no email.
Yeah. No.
Oh, sorry, it's there. Sorry, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get a choice to put in my name on the object page. So I guess we do need some developer credits, some developer intervention after all. But I feel like we found a bug here, Bert. Because we do get an error, but it's not the error that we expect.
Yeah, it expects the name.
It expects the name.
Yeah.
So I'm actually happy with this.
Yeah, because
because
you're not out of a job yet.
Because I'm not out of a job yet, and because it will illustrate a certain point in my conclusion quite perfectly. However, as far as developer efficiency goes, only having to intervene here, compared to building a whole application, it's quite efficient, right? So,
and to be totally fair, we've tried it out before, and it worked smoothly before. So it's okay.
So let's get back to our presentation. So we've generated most of this with only a very tiny bit that has to be added. So let's start talking about the conclusions. First off, when it comes to SAP development, there is no peer. Makes sense, because all of the other large language models are very general. They might know a lot about JavaScript, they might know a lot about
they don't have the vast repository of great examples of how to code.
So there is, because in the code example that I've shown, it was very limited. But if you should start experimenting with actual UI5 controls, with more complex logic, it really makes use of all of those components. We didn't show that exactly because of, we've still got some time restraints. But it can go very far, and it has been able to amaze some developers at our site with what it knows already. That's of course because it intimately knows the framework. I didn't show it per se, but it immediately knows where it should place every generated class. So you get a whole structure, a whole skeleton, without too much hassle, without any copy and pasting. You just click accept if it looks acceptable. Then all of your data stays within the SAP ecosystem. You don't have to send potentially IP volatile code to some off-site large language model. And finally, it's being continuously improved in very specific ways. Large language models are just general improvements, while here, SAP Build Code and Joule by extension is really being improved for us SAP developers, really keeping us and our needs and our customers' needs in mind. It's got downsides, however, which is of course that it's not perfect yet. We just saw that. Some prompting is not perfect. You still need some developer intervention.
And
insight, because especially when you start generating more complex scenarios, then you need somebody to say, hold up, does this code make sense? And finally, it still has to prove itself in real complex scenarios. Makes sense. It's a new tool. It just hasn't had the experience that, we developers have had. But it sounds like it's a rivalry. It's really not. Because developer acceleration will be the name of the game. You don't have to write a prompt 10, 20, 100 times until you find the holy grail that perfectly matches your needs. No, you will be able to generate a whole lot of code, and then the developer can write the code that remains yet. Now, I've said that it has been improving quite a bit, and it has surprised me about how it has grown in the past few months. Well, what else is on the roadmap? Well, like I've said, there's an increased focus on mobile developments. So in a few months, I expect some exciting things on that end. And of course, the accuracy will get better. It will be more flexible, more stable. And it has even been said that it will also be possible to extend the way Joule will be working in a build code, which might be just what we need for those complex scenarios. TypeScript has been a best practice, or at least a strong recommendation for quite a while, and has received full support since the latest UI5 version. Well, there will also be increased TypeScript support, and of course, many exciting features. I'm talking about data sphere integration, debugging tools, and finally, adaption projects. Well, and finally, there are quite a bit. If you're interested, I do recommend checking out the roadmap. But there's one thing that remains, isn't there? One final question that we've got.
Yeah, what about ABAP?
What about ABAP, indeed? Because, like I've said at the start, ABAP, partially a strong point, but also a weak point when it comes to large language models, is that it's very much a closed source system. That it's everybody who has tried asking any popular large language model to give some ABAP code might indeed run into the risk of hallucinations, of things that aren't best practice anymore. So that's also why Joule for ABAP has been released. It exists since the start of this year, and why it will be a very useful and strong tool to use.
Okay.
It's got several pillars. I'm talking about acceleration, I'm talking about empowerment, and finally I'm talking about transformation.
And what do you mean with that?
Well, with acceleration, of course, I'm talking about using AI to have some predictive code completion. I'm talking about automatically generating testing classes. And of course, I'm talking about code explanation, both standard code as well as existing entities.
Wow, that's
Save
great.
some time on documenting. That's true. Empowerment, also a very exciting topic, because that will allow us to use AI services in our ABAP solutions. And finally, for transformation, we've got, of course, the whole keep the core clean vision, which I would recommend at every customer. And Joule will also be able to help us really move towards that clean core, towards that cloud-ready future of SAP. Acceleration is possible, but both empowerment and transformation is something that will only be released throughout the later part of 2025.
Yeah, something to look forward to, and maybe for the next Dev2Dev.
Oh, definitely. I would love to be here and open Eclipse and delve into Joule on that part.
Okay.
And to really compare the two. So, it's already possible. It's possible to get started right now with ABAP, Joule for ABAP developments, because there's a free trial. It's available till the 15th of September. But you do have to make sure that you're signed up in time. For customers, the sign-up period is till the 15th of August. And for partners, it's a bit earlier. It's at the 15th of June. Important to note is that it's not available for all systems. It's mainly available for cloud systems. In that capacity, I'm mainly talking about public cloud environments, private cloud, starting from a certain release, and of course, ABAP on BTP. So those are the three systems that if you've got them and you want to test, well, now's your chance, at least until one of those mentioned dates. Okay. All right. So with that, we've come to the end of our presentation. We've seen some exciting things. We've seen what SAP's vision is for the new AI-driven future. And of course, we've really explored what is already possible, which other things we are free to explore, and those many exciting things we've got to look forward to. So now I ask you, are there any questions? And then I'll... How does Joule deal with data privacy? That's a good question. So the way that it works is, of course, it's a closed ecosystem. It's a closed ecosystem as in everything is SAP. So we've got both our normal data and our personal data. Both are being used to further refine our large language model. and of course to get a feeling of what the end user are actually using it for. I should point out that all of the personal data is being anonymized, and it will only be held up to a retention period of 1 year. And I believe that you can always just ask them to delete the data, as is according to GDPR compliance. One important part that should always be mentioned, both for Joule as well as large language models in general, is that you probably shouldn't submit too sensitive data. Mm-hmm. That's just a general best practice overall. As for HANA on-premise is currently not supported. So in that capacity, I would recommend to go towards, if you got, that's a tricky question, right? Something has switched over here. Just briefly looking at the moderator. The on-premise systems are currently not supported for Joule. So you would have to take a look at ABAP on BTP if you want to go towards Joule development in the cloud then. How does it work when you want to call external APIs? You're a bit limited in that field. It is possible. I haven't really had many hands-on experience with it, but it's definitely a possibility. And you're mainly limited to the external APIs offered by the Business Hub, by certain connections you have to configure in your BTP system. Okay. What are some things we should definitely keep in mind when using Joule? I think that all of the main tips when using a large language model apply. Be careful for hallucinations. Don't just blindly trust it. You always have to evaluate that what the solution is offered makes sense. And of course, as previously said, don't just throw too personal data or too confidential data into it. Maybe one thing that I do want to say, one thing that, for example, Joule for in Build Code context is currently a bit weaker on is actually changing the way how annotations visualize your service. So you do have to be aware that that's probably the part that will require the most developer intervention, like we saw, where there will still be a developer who makes the field available. Is using Joule free of charge? Do you have to pay for each time you connect? Well, with a free trial, of course, you can briefly explore Joule. Of course, what the situation will be after that free trial, I think I'll have to look at you for that one, Bert.
I'm not sure yet. We have to come back to that.
All right.
To be fair.
Yep.
It's often based on credits or on a fixed fee. It depends on the services.
Yep. Have you used Joule a lot already in actual projects? Not yet. It's a new technology, so it hasn't had a chance to really get used in a lot of new projects. But especially with the developments that it has been made in the past few months, I would definitely recommend it as a worthy tool to consider in starting a project. And I think we're through then. Then I would like to thank you very much for your attention and for sharing this midday break with me to talk about Joule.
Right. Thanks. Goodbye.